Hello, everyone. Forest Focus as Nottingham Forest face their final game before the latest international break when they go to Newcastle United on Sunday. A potentially daunting game on paper, but Newcastle have only got one more point on the board than us. So, what's the story of their season so far? Joining me to tell us more is our regular Newcastle fan guest, Rob Smyth. Rob, good morning as we record this. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you, Matt. Good, thank you.
Good to have you with us. You're off the back of a very nice Champions League win in Belgium. Premier League's been a bit different. We'll get into specifics around players and who've come and gone, but what have you made of it so far for Newcastle this season?
I think this conversation coming after the 4-0 win in the Champions League is going to put a different spin on it. I think at the start of the week, post the Arsenal game, despite it, whether it being a last-minute winner or not, I think it had been a bit of an indifferent start. And I think a lot of fans had accepted that, and there weren't a lot of complaints because of the whole Isak saga and how long it took to get some last-minute recruits in the forward line up front. It had been probably a tad disappointing with some positive signs. So a bit of a sluggish start, really. Probably a bit like Forest in a way, and really just waiting for the team to get going, which I think happened in the Champions League with a comprehensive 4-0 win. The new attacking force linked and looks good for the first time this season, and so positive signs, but still a long way to go. And I think the club are really going to be impacted this season, from the extra workload from the likes of the Champions League, but also because of all the shenanigans from a transfer point of view in the summer. It meant that players came in a lot later. Eddie Howe and his coaching staff have not had a long time to work with them. That kind of rhythm, which Eddie Howe really likes, is going to take a while to get drummed in. So although these stop-starts for the international breaks have been a bit of an annoyance, maybe it will help the club long-term trying to get that rhythm and the new team focus bedded in, hopefully before the start of the next clutch of fixtures after the international break.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched 3 of your games in the Premier League. So I watched half your games and actually thought you looked good in all of them. And I think in it you've taken what did you get? 1 point from them? Yeah, it was 1 point from 3 games when you played well. How much of that is down to, in 2 of them you didn't have a striker effectively? How much of it is down to Isak going late? Is it Voltemada? I don't know. Yeah, coming in late. Yeah, coming in late and looking good. How much of a hangover has that Isak thing been around the results, do you think?
I think that's been the biggest thing. I think I said all summer, I think the biggest problem we were going to have with the Isak saga is that I always thought he was going to go eventually, but how late it left it meant that all preparations, no matter what they'd done, whoever they got in, were going to be delayed. And it showed you with the results. Every game that they played so far in the Premier League has been impacted by first not having a proper striker and having to play the likes of Anthony Gordon through the middle at first, and then by the time that Voltemada and Visser, who was then got injured, came in, they've had to adapt and kind of change the style. And this first clutch of games has really been impacted with them, and I think it's shown in the results. We've been strong at the back. Midfield is, one of the best in the Premier League, but because that forward line has been missing the crucial link of a striker, we were left a lot of points on the table where a draw probably would have been a win, etc. And it's just such a shame because it means that probably this season's objectives are going to have to be tweaked a little because of that. This really kind of average start.
Voltemar is an interesting one. He's massive. He scored headers, but he's not actually supposed to be that good in the air. Weirdly, from what I've read about him, it's not his primary strength. What have you made of him so far?
I think I've been impressed. He's got, like I say, he reminds me a tad of Andy Carroll when he used to play for Newcastle, in the fact that just because he was so tall, everyone thought he was going to be fantastic in the air. But actually, he's got a fantastic touch, comes deep, very different player to Isak, which is one of the other reasons that the team is perhaps stuttering a bit, is they're having to alter the way that they play. But I think there's a lot of promise there. There's a lot of money. Look, always with gambles like that, like when we signed Isak, it's a big gamble. But I think you've got to have trust in Eddie Howe, and with the likes of Visser as a Callum Wilson replacement when he comes back, hopefully after the international break, it gives some exciting options. And I think when we played in the Champions League and won 4-0, they played Voltemada up front with Gordon on the left and Anthony Elanga from the previously of your place on the right. And for the first time this season, it clicked and it looked really exciting. And I think there are exciting things to come. I just think it's going to take a little time to bed in, which is not the great case when you're looking at already getting towards a fifth of the way through the season.
What have you made of Elanga then? I see he's been a bit in and out. Newcastle fans didn't take to him after he missed a good chance against Villa in the opening day. How are you viewing him so far?
Well, like I said to you on this pod before, I love the signing. I didn't have any problems with the fee because that's the modern transfer world. Obviously, it's ridiculous anyway. But if you put that aside, in the modern world, I think it was a fair price to pay when you see what people were going for. He's had a stop-start beginning of his Newcastle career, but I really like him. I think last night in the Champions League, he showed how electric and how much he can offer to a team. For me, he is an upgrade on Jacob Murphy, who had an amazing season last year. But for me, he would start. And I think last night showed with Gordon on the left, him on the right, and Voltemade, or maybe a Visser eventually through the middle. That will be the starting front three. And, like Forest fans will know from last season, if you have him bearing down on you, it's a scary sight to have. And I think it's a real weapon to have in our arsenal.
Let's just take a quick word for the Trent navigation. This game is it's on Sky, so you can watch it there. It's 2:00 kickoff, so you can get there early, breakfast, lunch, and enjoy the game. Also, looking ahead to Christmas, it's not far away. I was walking down the hill to school today with my son, and he said, the year's going fast. He's only 9. And I said, well, at least it'll be Christmas soon. So looking ahead to Christmas, here's a quick ad for Rick Parfitt Jr. and his gig at the Nav at Christmas. Tickets available now from gigantic.com. Do check that out and you'll get listings of everything else that is on at the Nav, entertainment-wise, on that website as well. And thanks for their support, as always. How are you feeling about this game in general? We've discussed Newcastle, only 6 points on the board. We've only got 5. It's all pretty chaotic at the moment for Forest. We're recording this before the Midtjylland game in Europe, and you were talking about how, a win last night for you guys changed perceptions. So I don't know what the perception of Forest will be specifically going into that game after our match, but how are you feeling in general about this match?
With a bit of trepidation, I think, because we've all had similar starts, both sides. Like you say, a result for Forest may do what it's hopefully going to do for Newcastle and buoy both teams. But I think, unfortunately, it's one of those already, so even so early in the season, both sides really need to get something from it. And not just get something from it either, probably have a really positive performance. Because up until last night in the Champions League, Newcastle hadn't really they'd been good, solid, but not put together a really strong performance. And I think that's what's needed. And I think hopefully, especially with the way that Ange wants to and tries to play football and the way that we try to, I'm excited. Again, I don't say this every time I come in here, but I think when we come together, Forest and Newcastle often put on a good show. And I'm hoping for that this weekend, and just obviously with a Newcastle slant.
I think we struggle against teams that sit in and then hit us on the break. I mean, Sunderland, not your favourite club, obviously, did a job on us last time. I guess Newcastle can't do that, so that might help us. But then Ange is wide open. You've got quality players. I'm going to ask you about set pieces in a minute. I mean, I suppose the score could be anything, couldn't it? I mean, I'm very nervous about the game, to be honest. I think you could definitely comfortably beat us, but we're so unpredictable. I assume you think there's just going to be a fair few goals in it.
Yeah, I think there will, because as well as we've been solid at the back, I think shown from the Arsenal game, Nick Pope, despite being a brilliant shot stopper, has got a rick in him. The defence is in a kind of a really strange state of flux at the moment, with trying to bed in new players, such as a new centre-half, Malik Chow from AC Milan, issues at fullback with some injuries and people coming back from long-term injuries. So I think, if I was a Forest fan and if I was Ange, I'd be looking at that there are weaknesses to try and exploit at Newcastle. But again, on the flip side, I think by trying to exploit those weaknesses, it plays into what we're trying to do with that, especially with that pace now in the front line with the likes of Elanga and Gordon and Voltemade, although perhaps not having if you watched every game, a massive impact. He's now, I think, got three in 4 or 5 starts. So it's an exciting prospect, and for a game that's on at 2:00 on a Sunday, which would normally perhaps be a bit of a graveyard slot, I think it's one that will perhaps surprise a few.
Yeah, fullback was the thing I was going to ask you about. Livramento's out for 6 weeks, had it done fantastically. Lewis Hall, I think, must be out as well, because I haven't seen him all season. Is that the one area in open play that you think you would worry about a bit? Burn and Trippier, obviously class player, but I think, is he 33, 34 now? Would you look at that and think that's the one area I'm worried about?
Yeah, I think with Lewis Hall, what the club have said, he's now back from his long-term injury, and he didn't compete. He's always had reduced minutes because they've been trying to ease him back. But I think, unfortunately, he's going to be pushed to play. And I think Lewis Hall will probably play at the weekend. Dan Burn has been playing at left back, but again, he's put a lot of weight on in terms of muscle over the last season because he was preferred at centre back, so he was trying to change his game and move away from that left back. So, but Trippier again, fantastic. Been a great servant to the club, but he hasn't actually put a foot wrong, and many thought he'd be leaving by now, but he's still been a stalwart of the team. But they're the areas where I think he could exploit. But I think we'll probably see Trippier and Hall play, and Botman and Chow at centre half. It'd be harsh on Burn, but somebody always has to miss out. But I think in terms of pace, I think they've got to try and play Hall, even if it's for, say, 60 minutes and Burn comes on then to hopefully with a couple of goals in the bag to steal it up. And that's the way I think Forest can really exploit it, because everywhere else in the midfield, they look relatively strong now, and a good bench as well.
Does the rest of the team almost pick itself? And I guess Pope in goal, Tonali, Bruno, Joe Linton, Gordon, Voltemada, and then Elanga or Murphy. Is that the only other decision?
Yeah, I would say the fullbacks would pick. If everyone was fit, the fullbacks would probably pick themselves now, with Livramento on the right and Hall on the left. Eventually, midfield, like you say, centre halves, similar. I think up front now, I think Howe's got a big choice to make now. I think there's a lot of loyalty there after Murphy had an amazing season last year. You know, I think he was second or third in terms of assists in the Premier League. But for many years, and I've said it on this pod before, we've been looking for an upgrade at right back. Elanga is that upgrade. I think after last night's performance in the Champions League, a big thing for me is that he now needs to be given that run of games to see how he fits in and have a set front three. And so hopefully, I think, and he got man of the match last night, so I think Elanga will play. And unfortunately, Murphy might have to bide his time on the bench. So an exciting prospect for Newcastle fans, because it's the first time ever in a number of years we're sitting there with quite decent strength in depth. So if Elanga was to tire after 60, 70 minutes, Murphy is a more than adequate replacement to come on, and that can be said from other positions throughout the team.
Are you a bit disappointed Zinchenko is out then? Because he's been inverting into midfield, leaving, wide kind of something out of a nature documentary with vast spaces for people to run into, and Elanga is quick enough to do it. That's probably not going to happen now. I guess it's going to be Williams and Savona, assuming there's no injuries tonight as we record. Would you have rather Zinchenko there to exploit, or would him in stepping into midfield presented some problems, do you think?
No, I think that would have been the ideal circumstance for Newcastle, because by him stepping into there, that space he would have left would have been almost like a perfect game for Elanga. And I think the midfield, the way that it's patrolled now by Tonali as like a 6 and roving roles for the likes of Joe Linton and Bruno, I think it will actually present more of a challenge if Ange goes that way, rather than having that kind of Zinchenko in that role. So for me, a bit disappointed, because I think the other way it would have been easier for Elanga to exploit. But I still think, there's going to be opportunities down both flanks because of the quality of the players on both sides.
The other one is I was going to ask about was set pieces. In my mind, Dan Burn was going to play, and then you'd have Thiaw, who looked good, Botman, Burn, Voltemada. All three midfielders are physically powerful, so that would have been an advantage. But are you not? I mean, you're still a big, strong side, aren't you? Even without Dan Burn, so a set piece is a big asset in this game, regardless.
I think so, definitely, and especially although the fact that if you read anything about Voltemada and it talks about how he's not very good with his head. All of his, apart from last night, his first 2 goals for the club were with his head, and he offers a presence, even if it's not a goal-getting presence. It's just an unnerving presence for centre halves. And at corners, the likes of Joe Linton is deceptively big and strong and powerful as well, and others as well. The likes of Chow really make a difference. So I think defending and attacking set pieces have been important, and they've also employed a new set piece coach, so they're trying a few different things. And Jason Tindall, the assistant head coach, is also quite big on the set pieces as well. So again, with a lot of heart, whether Dan Burn plays or not, if he does, it's another factor. And obviously, he scored one of the most famous headed goals in Newcastle's history in the Carabao Cup final. So he's always going to be a threat, and I think that's physicality is one of the big things that I think people don't realise about Newcastle, is that while they try a lot of pressing and a lot of pace, the physicality within the game with the likes of Joe Linton and Burn makes a real difference when they get on top of teams.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. That's one of the things that certainly worries me. Just lastly, then, do you think Newcastle fans going to the match are going to view this as a game that you not only need to win, but perhaps even should win, given our start? Which, as we saw with Forest v Sunderland, it can create problems and a quiet atmosphere. How do you think Newcastle fans are going to view this game in terms of should win, must win, take a point, all that kind of stuff?
I think if everyone's being honest, it's a should win. It's a must for a really good performance, because we've had good performances at St James's Park, but nothing that's been exciting like it was in the Champions League. So they're the big two factors for me. I think one of the most interesting factors in terms of kind of atmosphere is being the mid-afternoon kickoff, because of playing teams and playing ourselves in Champions League a lot. This Sunday mid-afternoon kickoff is going to become something of a regularity for the club, at least for the first 2/3 of the season. So I think that's something that potentially Forest could gain, because people not used to getting into games that at that time in that process. So I think that potentially could have a difference, instead of it being, say, a 4:30 on a Sunday or a Monday night game at 8 o'clock. I think that might play a part of not a bit of a hangover, but it's just a different kind of atmosphere. It's like mid-afternoon. When do people start their rituals of game day in terms of having a drink or some food? So I think that might play into it more than people will think. So that could be a deciding factor. And it wouldn't surprise me if the game ended up as a high-scoring draw 2-2. That's what I keep thinking in my head.
I would take that. I mean, I think as we sit here now, I think a draw for us is a really great result. So let's see how it goes. Just before we wrap things up, a word for streamline growth. If you're an entrepreneur looking to enhance your business, get in touch with James Bogue. Scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the description and he will sort you out. He has got a book as well and he will help take your business to the next level. So do get in touch with James. And he is a big Forest fan, of course, if he's sponsoring this podcast. Right. Rob, any final words, any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, I think it potential to be a really exciting early-ish kickoff game on Sunday. I hope it's a good game, and obviously from a bias point of view, I hope good game, but we come away with 3 points.
Well, we shall see. You mostly do in these games, apart from that Chris Wood hat trick. I don't think we've done too well at St James's of late. So, thanks to Rob as ever. He'll be back for the return fixture, and we shall be back tomorrow with a post-match show with I can't even think who it's with. Fothers and Mark, I think. So join us for that, and then Monday, heading into another international break. Why are we having another international break now? It's like 3 weeks.
Absolutely ridiculous. You get into that, you just get back into that nice rhythm again, and it's just completely obliterated again. Nobody you speak to seems to enjoy it, like it, and just you're counting down the days so that as everyone calls it, proper football comes back.
Exactly. Right. Thanks very much for Rob. Thanks very much for your company, everyone. Do us a favour, hit like if you haven't already. Do consider a subscription or membership. And if we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.